In this lesson, you are going to learn about the common routines and the expectation that we have in our class when we have our student work on a lab activities. Well, first of all, before the day of the lab, you are given a pre-lab assignment that include important information about the lab, which including safety, materials, and procedures. And completing this pre-lab is probably the most important step in creating a safe environment for all students. Because if we allow students who have not completed the pre-lab, this will increase the chance of students getting hurt in that group. Then of course you will know that you have to wear closed-toe shoe and tie up your hair if you have any long hair, and have your notebook and writing utensil. Now, the day of the lab, at the beginning of the period, dress up. Go get your safety goggles and your aprons and put them on. And then take your lab notebook and your writing utensil with you to your lab station. Don't take your cell phone or your backpack with you to the lab station. The lab station is very small. We have to share those space with other students. You don't want chemical to get into your stuff. And of course, while you're waiting for other students to get their stuff ready, review the lab procedure with other students in your group. Now, if there are any changes to the procedure and the teacher announce it and address it, take notes of those changes. And lastly, of course, carry out your procedure and record your data. Remember, you are working together as a team to explore and learn new things. Now, at the end of the lab, each one of you are responsible to help each other out to clean up the lab station and dispose any waste based on given direction, because certain chemical needs to dispose differently. Don't just throw things into the sink. If you're throwing toxic chemical into the sink, it's going to contaminate the water system in your city. Now, when you clean your lab station, make sure there are no trash in the sink. And that's the reason why I asked you before you start anything, double check if your lab station is clean. Because if your lab station is not clean, you got to let the teacher know right away. That way we know who is responsible for that messy lab station. And basically, if the next period find that your lab station is not clean, your entire group will lose 10% of the lab grade. Remember, cleaning your lab station is an important skill in a science class. Now, when we work in group during a lab activity or in any group, we always follow these golden rules. You are working as a team. And what does that mean? To work as a team, you care for each other and you be responsible for the action of others in your groups. That's what the team is all about. If one student is not following class expectation, all members in the group will share the same consequences. Remember, you're working as a team. You are responsible for reminding that student politely to be on task, especially with cell phone. Let them know, hey, put your cell phone away. Or student eating during a lab activities. Now, if that student refuses to follow your recommendation, it is your responsibility to notify the teacher immediately and appropriately. Because again, your safety is the highest priority when it comes to lab activities. Now, let's talk about some common lab safety techniques that you always do during a lab. Well, you always report all accidents to the teacher immediately. It doesn't matter if the accident is minor. You always wear safety goggles, okay? You always double check chemical labels. So sometime, for example, I have this bottle here, double check the name. Make sure you're using the right chemicals. Here's your goggles right there. Make sure you put on your goggles. And always smell any chemical by wafting with your hands. For example, if I have chemical in here, I wouldn't put my nose in there directly and snip the chemical. I use my hand and I waft it. So that way the fume will travel from this area to the next area. Because some chemical will produce toxic fume and will completely burn your nose. Now always know the location of your first aid, fire blanket, fire extinguisher, and goggle cabinet. And always wash your hand after the lab because chemicals are very toxic. And if you don't wash it with soap, you are basically eating those chemicals, okay? And lastly, if you are using any electrical equipment, always make sure the area is dry, okay? Because if it's wet, it's gonna conduct electricity. And guess who's gonna get hurt? It's gonna be you. So make sure your area is dry. Now let's talk about the lab safety. We call something never do. You never do this in your lab. Never taste any chemicals. Never pipette any liquid with your mouth. Never pull electrical cord, but pull on the plug itself. Okay? When you pull on a cord, you're gonna break the cord. Okay? And the cord break, and you expose the circuits, guess who can get hurt? It's gonna be you and your partner. So be careful. Never use flames near volatile, basically flammable. And flammable, think of flame, fires, chemicals. Basically, chemical like acetone and any alcohol, if you expose it to fire or flame, it's gonna create a chemical reaction called combustion, and the whole place is gonna be on fire. And guess who's gonna get hurt? It's you. So be careful if you are using any volatile chemical. Make sure there are no flame nearby. Number 6, never pour any unused or leftover chemical back into the bottle. This chemical is pure, okay? That means there's no contaminant. But if you pour this into a beaker and you pour it back here, this beaker could be dirty or contaminated. Now you just ruin this whole entire bottle of chemical. And chemicals are very expensive, okay? So if you do that, you're going to destroy the whole entire bottle, and you're going to mess up all the data for other students who are going to use this in the future. And lastly, never point your test tube towards someone when you're heating it. Point the test tube toward the wall. When you're heating chemical in the test tube, you're speeding up the chemical reaction, and sometimes the chemical will escape the test tube. And if it does, it's just gonna damage the wall. It doesn't hurt another student. Again, your safety is the #1 priority. And of course, this is a common lab safety that you should be aware in any science classroom. And throughout the year, we are going to introduce new lab safety rules that's specific to that lab.